Hello, my name is Sharice Myers, and I am the American Public Transportation Association's Director of Workforce Development. I'm bringing to you today some leaders from UITP's Workforce Committee, and they're going to talk to you about a report on absenteeism. I am excited to hand it over to the two leaders from the Workforce Committee. Gentlemen, could you introduce yourselves, please?
Thank you very much, Sheraz. I'm very pleased to be here to share with you and as APTA the report we've done with Eurogroup Consulting, and Jérôme is going to present himself. And very pleased to share the results and the lessons learned on absenteeism. Thanks UITP and the Business and HR Management Committee of UITP. I am the vice chair of this committee, and I'm also, to present myself, HR Director for bus and tram activities at RATP, which is the French national company in Paris. And I let Jérôme introduce himself.
Thank you, Alexandre. Pleased to meet you and to discover EPTA on this occasion. My name is Jérôme Pointeau. I'm Associate Director at Eurogroup Consulting, which is a consulting firm in France and around the world via its Next Continent network. I work with all transport stakeholders, PTA and PTO and industries, and I'm co-rapporteur with Alexandre of this report on absenteeism.
So we're going to share the main results and lessons learned from this report and answer your questions. And all questions you have, you can even stop us during the presentation. Do not hesitate. But coming back to the initiative of having a report on absenteeism, we all suffered from the pandemic crisis in the 2019, 2020, sorry. And of course, one of the lessons we had to learn about this pandemic crisis was how are we going to exit the absenteeism rate that have increased by a lot of percent. What we've seen, what we do need was to have a survey conducted by UITP members of the Business and HR Management Committee on this topic of absenteeism to learn more, understand better what was undergoing. And this survey has been set up in 2024, 23, sorry, and at the end of 23, and 20 operators, 20 public transport operators have answered the survey. And we launched a working group within UITP to work on absenteeism. I have to share 3 convictions after this work. This is a paper of 20 pages. I have 3 convictions about this topic. The first conviction is that absenteeism is a persistent challenge for public transport companies. It's not a problem for 2020 and 2021. Obviously, because many transport operators have not reduced the absenteeism as it was before and previously in 2019. And so this persistent challenge, of course, COVID was a cause, but it's not the unique cause and unique factor. And the pandemic, and this is the conviction, highlighted more fundamental drivers to explain that absenteeism remains at an incredible high level in many operators. And these fundamental drivers, for example, are job satisfaction, attractiveness of the profession, including the evolving attitudes toward work, and in particular for the youngest and for the new generation, into brackets. The second conviction we had is that it's not, we need to understand before acting. Understanding before acting. There is not any simplistic answer. And all the quite fixed solution, the easy solutions are not the solution for everybody. So we need to target the strategies according to the population, according to the situation of each company, and we had the feeling that it's not one factor. Of course, it's a multiple factor. And to address the issue and to target the strategies and actions, we need to go deeper in the analysis of the data and the qualitative actions and better understand the needs of people and workforce. So to understand before acting. And the third conviction we had in this report is that it's not an HR problem. It's not only an HR problem. The absenteeism has to be tackled with all the stakeholders, meaning the top management and meaning the executive committees, the top executive committees, meaning the trade unions, and meaning as well the local management, who obviously has much to do about the fight and the prevention of absenteeism. So with these three convictions that absenteeism, it's a problem of many public transport companies, which is not temporary. It's just a persistent challenge for many years, according to us. Second, that it's not so easy to tackle and address the issue, and we need to understand deeper before acting. And third, that obviously we need to involve all the stakeholders. So I let Jérôme introduce the methodology and the first results.
Yes, thank you, Alexandre. So this report was developed on the basis of the questionnaires completed by the members of the UITP, the Interim Commission, 20 members, and an in-depth discussion with a small working group, which allowed us to develop the action plan proposed in the report. So the study was carried out until mid-2024, and New Jersey Transport Corporation and Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority have contributed to the effort. Several topics were discussed with the organization. First, the principal one was understanding absenteeism. So we gathered absenteeism figures from 2019 to 2022, allowing us to a pre and post-COVID analysis. We also add absenteeism figures by year of experience in the company to allow us to identify a correlation with the experience of age of workers. And we also ask for causes and consequences of absenteeism to organizations. And finally, we ask what was the social framework in place in organization, maybe to identify links with absenteeism rates. A final chapter focused on approaches to developing well-being at work within organizations. So as suggest, we go right now to the absenteeism figures. Some precautions must be taken with this data. It's a declaration by organizations, often on different scopes, with calculation methods that are difficult to adapt to control. But still, the figures vary greatly between organizations, between 18% and 5% in 2022. The average rate across organization in 2019 was at 8.5% compared to 10.5% in 2022, showing an average increase of 2 points over the last 4 years. This increase is found in the majority of cases from 2020, highlighting the impact of COVID. However, after COVID, no organization, as Alexandre said, has returned to its pre-COVID level, highlighting a more profound transformation of organization and behaviors at work. If we look at the figures per years of experience, we see a rate around 6% for employees with less than 2 years of experience, which can also be explained sometimes by different social frameworks for this range of employees. Then we have a rate of around 9% for employees between 2 and 5 years of seniority. And finally, a rate around 11% for employees with more than 5 years of seniority, if we correct the explained data of some organizations. Then we see that as Alexandre said, it's necessary to go further in the analysis of different absenteeism situations because age is not the only factor.
One of the aim of this report was to analyze the causes and describe the impacts of absenteeism. So I'm not going to be long, but as you see on the slide, absenteeism has an impact, of course, on the company and on the society. We had for many operators economic consequences. You need to pay overtime for the people remaining. You need to recruit more, and you have training costs. You lost revenue because you are not offering the service. And of course, beyond the economic consequences, you have the customer-related consequences. Absenteeism affects the quality and reliability of service provided to passengers and reduce the service quality and frequency. There are safety concerns as well, because it's a security job, and you need to be sure to be secure for your passengers. But also you have internal impacts on public transport organization, and there are ripple effects. When you have let's say a 15% of absenteeism for a company that had before in 2019 7%. When you have 7% in 2019 and 15% in 2022 or 3 or 4, it affects operational challenges. It says something on employee well-being. It can affect the remaining people that are present to work. And it may reveal some recruitment difficulties and generally have an impact on turnover. So challenging and facing absenteeism is a huge concern, of course, for a public transport company as far as its financial stake, its customer-related priority, and it has also an internal impact on public transport organizations. But also, absenteeism is driven by various factors. We saw previously, we had this survey and asking for all the members who answered, what are the main reasons and causes, according to you, of the rise of absenteeism in your own company? 40% of organizations identified, of course, illness as the main cause of absenteeism. 35% attributed absenteeism and the rise of absenteeism to working conditions. 25% mentioned leave regulation and compensation as contributing factor, which is really high. And 15% pointed to difficult access to healthcare, when in some countries the access to healthcare is, or parental or family leave is really tiny. It seems to be a cause very important for 15% of the causes. And 10% of organizations identified economic factors, social conflicts, and managerial deficits as reasons behind absenteeism. Jérôme,
Yes.
beyond the causes and beyond the consequences and impacts of absenteeism, we tried through the reports to analyze and to have, I can say, a reading grid of absenteeism within the company, a kind of toolbox within to analyze absenteeism within the company, with two main parts that we are going to describe: development of persona, Jérôme is going to explain, and 6 axes of action plan that we tried to synthesize. So, Jérôme, for the first part, development of persona.
Yes. Maybe to begin, it's important to note that while absenteeism is a concern, it does not affect all employees equally. A significant number of them are never absent, and some only take short absences. So these brief absences are not the primary drivers of absenteeism within an organization. Thus, the analysis we made focuses on a much smaller group of employees with longer or more frequent absences have a more substantial impact. And to better understand them, we built persona, trying to develop the contributing factor of absenteeism. These persona are obviously not exclusive, and you could find them maybe caricatured for some of them. But let's go and present our personas. So we have 8 persona. The first one is the sick or injured short-term people, someone who suffers from non-chronic illness or has job-related injury and finds sometimes opportunity to rest. The second one is the sick injured for long-term, someone who has a chronic illness or long-term job-related injury or facing burnouts. We also have the elder worker, more frequent in the organizations, more and more frequent as a health-related issue, including chronic illness, age-related issue regarding rest periods. We also designed the carer, someone who needs to take care of someone of his family, can be a parent or a child, and has frequent and erratic absences. Then we have the extreme shift worker. We don't find this persona in all organizations, but sometimes we do. And he has schedules that generate increased fatigue, difficulties balancing one's personal life. I think this one, we can find them in all organizations, a disengaged worker, someone facing job dissatisfaction or job disengagement. Then we pointed out the double job worker, someone who finds ad hoc economic opportunities to earn extra money working elsewhere. We can be subject to fatigue or burnouts with his 2 jobs. And then the persona, we called him the strategist, someone who takes advantage of every company policy to be absent and using every kind of tricks so to be absent. So these are 8 persona. We designed them just to help us identify action plans and configure action plans to each persona. Then, as Alexandre said, we designed also 6 axes of action plans. You can find on this them on this page. And maybe to begin, I will start with the health, safety, well-being, and prevention. So for each group, we have a detailed page and showing what are the actions we identify with the working group, and we have a lot of illustrations identified by the members of the commission. I won't list all the illustrations, but you can have a look at them. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. So maybe for the first part, health, safety, well-being, and prevention, this team is tackle several parts, develop health and well-being plans, and then foster safety culture, conduct regular safety trainings, and implement safety inspection and audits. As an example, we can note action plans on nutrition, like Curly's, in-house physiotherapy office for EMT, or having its own center of doctors like RATP. TFL offers an employee assistance program. They call it TRIM, Trauma Risk Management. And some organization has developed training courses on conflict management like RIGA or again RATP. So this is for this first axis. On the axis of work and organization. So this part relate to involving employees in the scheduling process by seeking their input and preferences where possible and by personalizing work schedules. When they can also anticipate the construction of schedules and commit as much as possible, not to modify them, improving transparency and relationships with employees in the scheduling process. The need to invest in technology is also pointed out to better manage the shifts. For example, TPG implements job rotation and part-time work option to reduce monotony and accommodate personal needs. RTP has developed a mobile app for its driver to facilitate the communication with the HR. Netherlands has introduced a type of compulsory where driver indicates their preferences at the beginning of the month, and if they do not, they can't complain afterwards. Some organizations create marketplace where drivers can swap their shift with each other, also an app or a tool dedicated to this marketplace. And then if I go on the management and engagement part, the aim is to foster a supportive management culture to reduce absenteeism. Of course, the relationship with the company, the collective, and its management is key to maintaining employee engagement. So this topic deals with reinforcing management and provide manager training and developing employee engagement. Also, we have quite a lot of examples. If I mention some of them, Keolis noticed that managers fear to ask the right question because of the law and are not properly prepared for the interview. Then organizations like FGC, RATP, and Keolis train managers how to interview the employees with repetitive sickness to better understand the causes. Also, TFL has developed a leadership framework setting out what we expect leaders to do. These are some examples we can point out. Alexandre, if I go on the next axis.
Yes, just to be clear, these 6 key actions or 6 outlines of action plan, it's the result of all the action plans that we have collected during the survey, coming from the 20 operators that that answered the survey. So this is the synthesis of what we saw during all this study and all these reports on. Well, this is 6 axes of action that we can advise concerning absenteeism, and the 4th one is to control and fight against absenteeism fraud, and not to be naive, because we saw during this COVID crisis and post-COVID crisis in many operators some attitudes towards the risk of fraud and the risk of being fired even by workers, slight different from previously. I'm not going to insist on that, but for my company, RATP, for example, it's hundreds of people. I'm not saying the number, but it's hundreds of people who have been fired because double job worker, taxi, and at the same time sick leave, or false documents, because we know that by internet you can buy for 20 or 30 euros a false sick leave document, an attestation, and all the documents needed to go to the social security. So we need to straighten absence verification processes to ensure legitimate sick leave, but at the same time we need to talk with people who have extended sick leave to verify their condition and provide them for support for their return to work. For somebody who is in sick leave for more than 6 months, 1 year, or 2 years, he needs to have a contact with managers in order to prepare the return to work. And ultimately, we advise, and we see that there is some companies that put in place some tools and KPIs and data analytics to monitor and predict potential fraud. When you see some sick leave during the vacation, when you see some sick leave during the religious day, you need to be very precautious with the reality of the sick leave delivered by the doctor. So verify and control absences is part of the, according to the working group, is part of the action plan. The 5th key action is to adapt our HR policies. And from an HR perspective, because we are part of the Business and HR Management Committee of UITP, we need to adapt our policies. So the companies involved in the working group, so it was very important to enhance employer brands, meaning that we need to communicate and inform about the way the companies are dealing with the absenteeism management, sharing resources related to employee well-being, being very clear on what is used in the companies regarding employee well-being, absenteeism management, even communicating on social media platforms. The second action is to deploy, improve our recruitment strategies. We must assume that we need to attract candidates that value support in managing absenteeism and to select better quality candidates in terms of to avoid, if possible, turnover. So trying to have a selection at in terms of recruitment strategies, a better selection into brackets. The third action would be to define policy for double jobs. We advise companies to clearly define in policy whether employees can hold double jobs or not. If they are able to have double jobs, maybe it must be regulated in order not to have people in sick leave for their first job and taxi or cab in the second. And fourth action, adapt salary based on work presence, meaning trying to see if possible to have a salary gap, an increased salary gap between the ones who are present and the ones who are absent. And it could be done by making some incentives, of course, for those who are present, but it can be done as well. And some organizations opt for that, for policies that penalize absent employees with reduced salary. And the sixth key actions is to understand, measure, and steer absenteeism, better understand absenteeism patterns, and implement measures to address them. Meaning that we need to govern absenteeism with the executive committee, with the trade unions, like I said in introduction. And so we need to develop comprehensive absenteeism policies that clearly outline acceptable reasons for absence, reporting procedures, consequences for excessive absenteeism. And for that purpose, HR needs to deliver some KPIs, alert KPIs, a structure of reporting and even audits of attendance. Also, some companies and the working groups said we need to first deploy employee-centered initiatives, meaning we need to hear the workforce better in order to provide tailored support and strategic targeted services for a certain population. But also we need to conduct absenteeism data analysis. Post-pandemic, many organizations said we spent a lot of time, many time, to address the KPIs, the qualitative analysis of absenteeism. So all data has been shared in many organizations using surveys, interview to gather qualitative data, and also collect and analyze absenteeism data to identify, to better understand, and set up the action plans that are targeted to the population and persona. So at the end, and it's only an overview of the report of 20 pages, we can, Jérôme said in conclusion that, and you can ask and prepare your questions, saying again, the report is not a scientific report. It's a report that aims to analyze the causes of the rise and increase of absenteeism first. That helps to insist on the impacts of such an absenteeism increase on a company like a PT company. And third, identify possible axes and outlines of actions. And it's like, thanks to the persona or the axis of action plans, the initial aim of this report has been transformed in having a toolbox, having a reading grid that helps any company that wants to tackle and face the absenteeism problem to think about, to have the questions. Oh yeah, health and safety. Did I mention the double job worker? Did I mention the persona, the elder worker, the carers? So it's a toolbox and a reading grid to help any company and PT to face the absenteeism challenge and persistent challenge. Do you have any question? Was it clear?
Well, first, thank you both for sharing this very valuable resource with APTA members. I would like to first ask for our two, I want to say, operations and human resources leaders to come on screen and come on camera. I'd like for them to do a little comparative analysis to some of the things that you've shared with us. So if George and Steve are available and in a place where they can come on camera and come off mute, I would love to have them join us. In the interim, I would ask for you to first turn it to the slide of your personas. I'm going to take the pen off and hopefully George and Steve will have the ability to come on camera with us. So if you look at the personas, can you tell me, do you have these same reasons for absenteeism in your organization? So first, could you introduce yourselves, share your role in your organization, and share your role with the APTA committee? And then tell us if at your organization you see these same personas for the reason for absenteeism.
Absolutely can. George Fields, Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority. I'm our Deputy General Manager for Human Resources and Vice Chair for the APTA Workforce Development Labor and Employee Relations Subcommittee. The two that really stick out for me are that sick short-term, sick and injured short-term, and sick and injured long-term. I put in the notes there, we quite oftentimes see our operators and police officers fall into this bucket, and they make up the larger amount of people that we see absent. We average somewhere around 6 to 7% absenteeism rate, and the greater majority of them are operators or police officers that are out in this 0 to 6 month time frame. And particularly on the officer side, a lot of it is a workers' compensation issue. On the operator side, interesting enough, where you had the information with regard to tenure. On the operator side, we do see that by the time 10 to 15 years or 20 years rolls around, the operator has kind of worn down, and if they're not careful, some of the health issues have started to creep in. So we certainly have some policies that help us with regard to wellness and wellness incentive, but yeah, these two personas we can't seem to get away from.
Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Jovel, Operations Manager of Workforce Development at Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority. I'm also the Vice Chair of the Education and Career Awareness Subcommittee, within APTA. So, thank you for the presentation. I think these personas, I agree with George. Those short-term sick and injured and the long-term sick and injured definitely, play into a big part of, our challenges, post-pandemic, our absenteeism, specifically in the state of California. There's not only the post-pandemic that's been an impact, but there's also been legislation across the state that's made it more, I guess, favorable for employees to use sick time without being penalized and things like that. So we're having to reevaluate our attendance policy. And there's a lot of impacts there. I think you're seeing more of the just overall employee well-being and impact from mental health being an impact, both post-pandemic and some of the things that we've been through at VTA, as an agency. So, I think there's a lot of impacts, in these two areas, both short-term and long-term. And I agree that, me myself coming up as a former operator, and, I was an operator for 13 years. So I absolutely see that impact for an operator, I'd say around years 6 through 15. That's usually where you find that, you start feeling your body break down a bit sometimes, your back, your shoulders, your knees, and things like that. So there's absolutely an impact on operators, in that area. So I really agree with, the personas. I really like how they're broken out to, and also touches on, there could be other factors, right? The disengaged worker and other areas like that. So I really like how everything's broken out in each area. I think from the transit agency perspective, it allows you to look at, the larger picture and see, so I guess you could say some quick wins or some quick ways to try and improve the absenteeism. If some of these are more difficult to address, but some of them are absolutely achievable, a little more easy.
Thank you, Steve and George. I would ask for you to change the slide to your slide of the wellness plan, because I think that Steve is kind of tapping us into how we could go into having some quick wins, and then you have this action plan here that illustrates really how you can start to move forward. So, Steve and George, when you look at this plan, is there anything in particular that stands out? Maybe you're already doing it in your organization, or like, oh my goodness, we haven't thought of this yet, but we could use this as a key action plan, a key part of an action plan. Sorry.
Yeah, on our end, we have a wellness incentive plan that we've had for the last 8 years, and essentially it provides the employee with the ability to get a 2% reduction in their employee premium for healthcare, for medical, dental, and vision, if they take their annual physical, if they get their annual physical within a time frame allotted, as well as if they get a dental cleaning within the time frame allotted, the calendar year. Within that same incentive, early on, we used to have a tobacco-free or non-tobacco user incentive as part of that as well, like a 1% incentive. And so over the last 2 years, we've seen an uptick in folks that are utilizing that incentive to go out and be engaged with their doctors and get their cleanings. We know as much that particularly the annual physicals or the preventive things kind of help the claims experiences over time. We're also thinking about, or we've flirted with, how do we mix in mental health with that? So when you go to get a physical, you might go through kind of like this, just kind of cursory mental health questionnaire, but you don't go through a mental health visit at all. And so we're trying to figure out how might we wrap that into incentive planning, or for that matter, take it a step further to the absenteeism piece. We reward people for perfect attendance, but how do we incentivize people for perfect attendance?
George, that's great. That is really great. Steve, anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, just I know we've really had a big focus on the HR side from our health, health and wellness group on fitness challenges, having gyms in the workplaces, having different workshops, and actually part of our joint workforce investment labor management partnership, we one of the pillars within our partnership with our union is health and well-being, and we have a health and wellness fair once a year with 4 smaller events across the work locations that really focus on different, whether we get gyms that come in with discounted rates and meal prep ideas and things like that, to promote overall health and well-being. I think the other area within HR that we've really expanded on our mental health resources, our, expanding from the typical EAP program and some of the barriers that creates, working through an EAP program. We have 6 clinicians that have been brought on. We've had since 2021 on site and available to all our employees. That's outside of the normal EAP program. That's just more accessible and streamlines the initial point of contact with a mental health professional, and then they could transition that into the EAP normal process. So those are some of the things that we've touched on, but I think some of the points on here definitely areas for agencies to look at if they don't have some of these things in place.
Thank you so much. There's one other slide that I wanted to cover. It was about scheduling. And because the Workforce Development Committee is working hard on this issue here in the States and in Canada. So, George, it's specifically your subcommittee that's going to go into this area, but I'm sure that we're experiencing this at both organizations. How might we start to work on this as a key action, scheduling flexibility and what's mentioned here, like double shifts, and how might we begin to incorporate this?
Yeah, I think as much particularly for the management side, because I know our unions have long talked about wanting to make sure that schedules are appropriate, and a large part of that goes to having enough people to fill the schedules in the best way to meet service. But I think this could be some education for management where you could see that there's this downstream effect of double shift. So when person has double shift for extended periods of time, whether they want it or not, they end up causing physical and mental issues to themselves, which ends up causing absenteeism and dollars and cents lost to the RTAs. Versus if there's some baby step or footsteps that could be made towards scheduling in a more flexible way, perhaps that absenteeism goes from 8% to 5 to 4, and I think that would be in our committees, that would be something to show the operational folks. I'd say the operational folks, because they really hold the key to what the schedules are going to be, but showing where that dollar value ends up occurring because you've skirted back the ability for someone to become absent in one of those personas. You've now maybe compromised a little bit on how you actually do service, but you've saved the employee, which is really the main thing. Sharice, I'm thinking through we're doing our session in June, is that right?
Correct. We're doing this in June. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so certainly, I think we have to figure out how to incorporate this presentation with other things planned.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, agreed. So there are several resources that we have available. We have a toolkit. The APTA leadership class has done a presentation on scheduling, and we also have the meeting that's happening usually once or twice a quarter. That is a combination of the unions along with several organizations. One organization being Indigo that is quite mature in the scheduling. What's key is that we can now add this in as another resource. I would like to ask for Karita to join us on screen and audio to introduce herself and ask if you have any questions before we close this session out.
Hi, Cherise. Thank you. First of all, I just thought it was an excellent presentation. The personas, I mean, that just blew me away, and I feel like of everything that I saw, that's such a helpful tool. And I'm looking forward to seeing the reaction from APTA members to that particular slide in particular, but really to the whole report. I think I know from APTA research how important the relationship is between an employee and their immediate supervisor, right? We learned from that report in particular, but multiple reports. When I say that report, APTA's Transit Workforce Shortage Report, how important it is to have a good relationship between the employee and their supervisor. And I really believe that training supervisors on how to ask the right questions, what questions can they ask, what questions can't they ask, and then more importantly, what do they do with that information once they receive it from the employee, can go a really, really long way. And we all know that training is not a one and done. There is a need for constant reinforcement to make sure that supervisors' skills are fresh and up to date when it comes to that. So I really just want to advocate for real scenario-based training for supervisors of employees when it comes to questioning and having conversations around absenteeism. My question really was, you heard a lot of different success strategies. What, if anything, is there one particular strategy or tactic that comes to mind that you felt was especially creative or out of the box that that you found that is being implemented and having some success?
I would say this is a good question, Carita, but the aim of this report was to say everybody is different. Public transport companies have the same challenges and facing the same challenges, but we have not the same workforce.
Right.
There was in the working group Jerome, New Jersey Transit was participating. It is very different from maybe Riga and maybe RATP in France. So we cannot make an assumption that one key element is going to be the success factor for everybody. The meaning of our report was to say, well, you have a kind of toolbox. You have the questions to ask to yourself with the persona, with the key action plans. Take a look on the report, take 1 hour of your time reading the document and say, well, in my organization, my company, what would be the most important? Is it to reinforce management, like you said, and I agree with you, it's very important for supervisor to talk and to have the right position to talk with the employees on absenteeism. But maybe for others, it's going to be the investment on health and safety. And maybe for others, it's going to be to insist on the social fraud. And maybe for another, it's going to be the important is to say that the executive committee has to be at the top dealing with the subjects. And it's not only an HR subject, but it's a subject of everybody. So from a company to another, we saw that the targeted strategy was maybe different because the maturity of each company is not the same. So saying out of the box, maybe what I would say is that I was surprised by the energy and investment on data analysis that some of the companies, and I'm going to say one or another company, but maybe 3 or 4 companies within our working group had made an investment on machine learning and data analysis that helps them to foster, to shape a new action plan. It was very, very impressive. And I think this is the key element, like I said in the introduction, understanding before acting.
Yeah. 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 Very good response. And I really appreciate what you're saying about it not being an HR problem. This is a business problem. It is an organization-wide business problem. It's a problem for the leadership. It's a problem for the board. It's a problem for the executive committee. It is a business problem, not a human resources problem. Very, very good point.
I just want to speak to, it kind of connects one to what our presentation shared about fraud, and then Karita, what you just brought into it about the actual supervisor getting more training. There was a pilot program where they had HR do a call to the person who was out around about between the 15 and 30-day marker. And then they had the direct supervisor do a call around the 30-day marker. The HR call, not that it didn't have any impact, but the workers all reported feeling care and concern from the organization when the direct supervisor actually reached out to see how they were doing, or to not just see when they were coming back, right, but to just see how they're doing. It made a great difference in the worker feeling cared for, and I'm sure it would have some impact on this fraud piece too. I mean, we had all the other things, right? Investigators and people following people around and making home calls, but this simple thing, just having the supervisor make a call, brought more workers back to work than any of those other tactics. And what they said is they felt cared for. So with that said, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Do you have any concluding remarks that you would like to make about the report? I definitely want to say that the report is available on the UITP website, and that you can pick this report up for your organization so that you can have this data and this research. Specifically, everybody's been talking about the personas, and you can start to look at the action plans that are there. Please do go to the UITP website and get your copy of the report for your organization. Cristal, I know that you won't be able to be on camera. Did you want to say anything to close us out before the gentlemen make their concluding remarks?
Hi, thank you, Cherise. No, I just wanted that on the UITP website, it's for members only. So if you're not a UITP member, please, they can ask you and you can send the report directly, Cherise.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sure. You can email our team and we have the report all ready to go. Thanks to UITP and the team. Gentlemen, any closing remarks?
No, thank you very much. Thank you for welcoming us, even at distance. But thank you very much. It was very pleasant for us to participate to this meeting with APTA.
So thank you. This was a presentation of understanding absenteeism. Yes, did you want to say a concluding remark? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was thanking you like Alexandre did. Thank you for letting us sharing this report with you.
So this is our conclusion for the UITP Understanding Absenteeism in Public Transport Operations. We want to thank UITP and the committee leaders and the UITP staff for joining us today. Thanks to our committee leaders for the Workforce Development Committee, George and Steve, for tuning in and giving the perspective on our end. Again, my name is Cherise Myers. I'm the Director of Workforce Development, and we are concluding this particular session.